Hey, what is going on, all my fellow godlies and Warframe enthusiasts around the world? This is Vance from the Warframe God Build series. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that. I really wish that I had thought about the idea for this video sooner, because I could have actually given this video to you guys as a Christmas present or like a New Year's Day thing. So hopefully I can get this up quick and make sure that you do have this on the first day of 2020. So I feel like this video is going to spark a lot of debate, some of which is probably going to be very heated debate, but it's fair debate. It's everything that we're going to be citing in Warframe is going to be currently in-game or storyline that has been featured in quest lines. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping here. I released this teaser that shows the most Eptipto God builds coming 2020. And I know what you're thinking, Vance. You've already done God builds for like every single Warframe and a lot of the weapons. What is there left to do? Well, that's simple. I'm going to give you a really big clue here. With the Railjack update, there are some builds that desperately need to debut, because a lot of people are under the assumption that there is one specific thing that is the primary go-to for Railjack, and those people are, well, they're right, but they're also wrong, because with very specific builds, you can still be viable in Railjack. So, in 2020, you're going to get a taste of those builds. Also, we are cleaning out the cobwebs of the Starcom clan. What this means is anyone who has been offline for the triple digits, meaning if you've been offline for 100 days and up, you're going to get wiped from the clan. So for future joining members, don't be offline for the triple digits. We understand you need to take a break from Warframe. We all need to take breaks from Warframe because we get burnt out. Sometimes there's content droughts and there's just not a whole lot to do. So if you're not going to play Warframe for the triple digits, just log in, just log in and close your browser out again. That way it reflects an active playing member of our clan, and we don't have to swipe you out from under the rug. So we're going to be recruiting a lot more clan mates. We lost a lot of people in 2018, 2019. We have roles that are opening up. The social media ambassador, resource manager, alliance leader, things like that. We've already absorbed like 2 different clans. We're perfectly willing to absorb anyone else's clan who doesn't have research done or not a whole lot of active members. Whatever the case, even if you're a part of a clan who's dead set on staying within that clan, you can hop over to the alliance. And for clans who feel as though they've invested too much platinum into their dojos and whatnot, we have a method for you to salvage that platinum and bring it over for usage in our clan if you so desire so those opportunities are going to be opening up for you, and I always include the link to our Discord page in the description. So if you're interested in that, go to our Discord, DM me or one of the leaders. We will get you invited and we'll go from there. So, let's get into the actual topic of this video now that we're 3 minutes in. I think with casual players of Warframe, or just casual gamers in general, people do not scale Warframes to other characters in popular media, such as Superman or Goku. It almost seems ridiculous to compare an Excalibur to Goku or Superman. You look at these Warframes and you think to yourself, well, they're probably no more powerful than like Halo Spartans. Halo Spartans with a little bit of, magic. You could not be any more wrong with that statement than what you already are, and I'm going to use different items of comparison to illustrate for you why the Warframes are more capable than what you're giving them credit for. So for this video specifically, I have decided to pull up a few items that can help illustrate to you the differences between Warframe and other things that you are probably already familiar with. like Halo. Halo is going to be my go-to for this series, so don't take, like, I love Halo, so anyone who is a fan of that franchise and they feel triggered by this video, just keep in mind that I'm giving credit where credit is due. Halo is a great franchise. I'm not going to be using it as a whipping boy. I'm just going to be using it as like a taper, primer to compare different weapons. So I think that it's an accurate statement to compare the Halo 2 Magnum to the Lado in Warframe. I feel as though if the Magnum were brought into Warframe from Halo, it would probably be the Lado in Warframe. They do around the same damage, have around the same magazine size. They're similar in look. I mean, just everything about the Magnum, to me personally, screams Lado. It's really the same case with the Bratton and Assault Rifle. I feel as though if the Halo 3 Assault Rifle were brought into Warframe, the equivalent of that would probably be the Bratton. They just function very similar. Again, same magazine size. They don't look really the same. I don't think that really much matters as long as they do at around the same damage. That way we have a good buffer to translate damage that's being done from Halo into damage that's being done into Warframe. And so for my last comparison for now, I'm going to go with the Burston and Battle Rifle. Again, what's important about these weapons being compared is to try and figure out just how exactly damaging or lethal the weapons of Warframe compare to the weapons of Halo. This is going to be important in deducing how strong the enemy units are. And once we find out how strong the enemy units are, we're also going to find out how strong and capable the Warframes are. But comparisons just aren't going to help us in later topics of discussion, so keep that in mind as I move throughout this discussion. Now, the next thing I want to reference for you is a little video that debuted at the 2019 TennoCon for Warframe. It's the live action trailer, or at least it looks live action. It's actually all CGI, and I, for one, would love to see a full web series or full-length movie be done with these type of graphics, because this was incredibly impressive. This is my go-to for trying to introduce new players to Warframe, because it's a very eye-opening trailer. It's very visually pleasing. It's like eye candy for me. The important takeaway from this trailer is the enemy units that are being shown. Later on in the trailer, you're going to see Warframes just absolutely demolishing this enemy faction known as the Grineer. According to the lore, before the Awakening, before the Warframes re-emerged and started demolishing the Grineer, there was a war between the Grineer and the Corpus in 100 Years' War, over 100 Years' War, where the Grineer were absolutely demolishing the Corpus. I feel as though it's a fair comparison to compare the Corpus to the Covenant from the Halo, because they are very, very similar in functionality. They have high shields, and they use plasma weaponry. We didn't know the full extent of what the Corpus were capable of until last year at around this time with the update Warframe Fortuna. In that update, we got introduced to a giant mechanized like spider that has a shield relay that's located off-site. So it took 2 assault teams to bring that thing down. One assaulting the shield relay and one assaulting the Prophet Taker directly. If it weren't for the team that had successfully carried out their mission on the relay, then the assault team on Prophet Taker never would have been able to do damage to the Prophet Taker. Yet in spite of this, the Grineer have been able to topple that type of enemy for 100 years. Think about that for a minute. I don't think there's anything in the Covenant's arsenal except for maybe the Scarab that has such high energy shields that it outright can't be damaged until you take out a relay that's located off-site. With the Scarabs, you basically just get on board and blow it up from the inside. So already you have the Corpus, who in my opinion are more capable than the Halo Covenant, and I'm going to use the guns as comparison here. So it takes probably 5 to 10 shots from a battle rifle to pop the shields of the energy shields of a Halo Elite and kill them. The Corpus Heavy Tech, they are by comparison stronger than the Halo Elites. They're more like a Halo Spartan with overshields. What they lack in agility, they make up for in durability. So they can tank more of a hit. It's just going to take more to put them down. But they're not as agile, so I think that, nobody really holds a competitive edge over each other. I think that really a standard unit, like a standard squad of infantry of Halo Covenant versus a standard squad of Corpus is just going to be a very equal battle. Because you have enemies, and the Corpus are a lot smarter than the Grineer. The Grineer are cloned over time, and their biology degrades, making them more aggressive, making their lifespans much shorter. So I feel like the Corpus are more smarter than the Grineer. I think that fighting the Corpus is like fighting a good kill squad of Halo Covenant. So I'm always going to be using the Corpus as comparison here because the Grineer have been able to devastate them and dominate them over the course of 100 years. They've built up their entire arsenal to deal with and endure plasma weaponry. So they've built up impact like weaponry to negate shields, or at least pop them very, very quickly. And they've built up armor that can absorb a lot of the plasma damage. So with like a standard LMG saw that you operate in real life, it's not practical for you to walk around holding this thing because it's so heavy. It's like 60 pounds. The standard heavy Grineer carry around a Gorgon, which is probably 3 times heavier than that. It's most likely as heavy as I am. It weighs somewhere in the 120 range, and yet the heavy Grineer, not only do they walk around sporting this casually, but they're oftentimes in an unalerted state, showcase just wielding it one hand. That's absurd. So they're very, very strong, and their armor is very, very thick. In higher waves of anything, when the enemies level up to like 100, 150, you're going to find that they can absorb a lot more damage than their Corpus counterparts. If those shields break, the Corpus are pretty much done. With the Grineer, they have such good armor that they can absorb a lot of the punishment you put into them. And that's where I transition into the last comparison. The last comparison is the Spartan Laser compared to the Opticore. Again, in similar functionality, very similar design, similar damages. We all know what the Spartan Laser is capable of doing. It's essentially an anti-vehicular rifle. This thing one-shots wraiths, tanks, banshees. It's a power punch. I think that the Opticore is slightly weaker, but not by much. Not by much at all. Not enough to merit it obsolete in comparison to Spartan Laser. I think that it's still gonna, one-shot a lot of the vehicles unless you're doing really high-level stuff. So, keeping that in mind, I have seen, with my own 2 eyes, heavy gunners from the Grineer be able to tank an Opticore shot, or at least absorb it. And if the heavy gunners can't do it, the Nox units definitely can. The Nox units have such high, ridiculous armor values that it's really hard for me to understand if the Covenant have anything that can counter that, aside from stealth and, the Halo Energy Sword using Spec Ops units. So the Spec Ops units were units that were showcased in the Halo web series Headhunters. They are the elites that do primarily all the stealth missions. They're using active camouflage most of the time, and they have red energy swords. I think that they are more than capable of dealing with any of the standard Grineer heavy units. The Nox is going to be taken by surprise, and if you can take it by surprise, you can immobilize it and completely decimate it. All you got to do is really crank in the headshots and pop the glass, so that'll kill it almost immediately. But I mean, in terms of sheer firepower versus the Nox, you're not going to be able to, like, a plasma launcher isn't going to do a lot. Standard anti-vehicular weaponry, it's not going to really matter against the Nox unless you pop that glass. So moving up the chain of infantry units, you're gonna have the Spec Ops elites from Halo, and just higher ranking elites. I don't think that grunts and jackals are gonna pose much of a threat to really anyone in the Grineer ranks. They're just not. They don't do enough damage. They're not equipped with anything that matters. The Spec Ops grunts will usually use fuel rods, so we're going to reserve them for talking about the Spec Ops elites. Now, when you move up on the Grineer side of things, just like the Covenant, you have a variety of different task force for different things. You have the Tusk, you have the aquatic Grineer from the Uranus tile set, but we're going to skip over a lot of these units because a lot of these units are very specialized, and in my opinion they're not any more capable than the standard units. So we're going to step up with the Halo Covenant Armada, and we're also going to step up with the Grineer. We're going to go up the tier and talk about the Spec Ops Covenant versus the Nightwatch Grineer. Now, there is a tremendous difference between the standard Grineer units and the Nightwatch. The Nightwatch were specifically equipped to deal with Warframes. Once the Warframes started awakening, and once there was a lot more of them waking up, the Grineer were rushing to reverse engineer some of the Warframe tech. And after successfully doing so, a lot of the Grineer were successfully integrated with a lot of different Warframe abilities. You know, you have the generals that can do switch teleport, you have some that can cloak, you have some that can teleport. They're just more capable. And to put it into terms that you could understand, a Mastery 0, when you first start this game, we're going to refer back to the trailer, when you first start the game, you are as capable as this Mag, this Excalibur, and this Volt. You, starting out the game, you know, the first minute you open up this game, you are capable of handling a small army. So what that entails is, like, you know, 4 to 10 squads of Grineer. You can handle a very small army. That's a little bit more than what a Halo Spartan can handle, right? So from Mastery 0 to about Mastery 8, you're still considered a noob. Your mods aren't that great, your damage isn't that great, you're probably not all that strong, and if you happen to run into the Nightwatch at this point in your Warframe career, you're going to get decimated. You have nothing in your arsenal that can deal with these guys. They are too strong. They stop being a viable threat to you, I feel, at around Mastery 14, because by then you're leveling up your mods, you're becoming stronger, the mods are boosting your stat values, and you really can't do that in Halo. But let's say that the Halo Spartan had access to cryo rounds, explosive rounds, modifications to its Spartan armor to make it more durable. Do I feel as though the Halo Spartan could keep up with the Warframe? Absolutely. Up till Mastery 14, I feel as though the Master Chief could definitely compete with the Warframes and probably outdo them in some cases. But taking on the Nightwatch is a totally different story, because the Nightwatch are equipped to deal with Warframes, meaning they're accustomed to dealing with Warframes that are decently modded. They're accustomed to dealing with unique weapons, unique powers, and in a lot of cases they're still going to take the victory. They are a totally different beast entirely, and it's very important that you don't underestimate them, because we as Warframe players, we've grown accustomed to considering the Grineer as fodder, but in comparison to everything else, like the Halo lore, these guys are still very capable. Do I feel like the Spec Ops units could take the Nightwatch? Absolutely not. The only way the Spec Ops units can win against the Nightwatch units of Grineer is if they approach this mission 100% stealth. But the problem with the Nightwatch is that they're not stupid. I mean, with Warframe, if you do like the Mastery rank up test, you're eventually going to run into the Nightwatch. One of the Mastery tests has you fighting the Nightwatch. So, I personally did that test with a Loki, and what I found is even though I was using Cloak, I didn't have a weapon that was fully suppressed, meaning it wasn't silent. So they were able to deduct, through deductive reasoning, they were able to figure out where I was on the map. They still didn't know where to shoot, but a Loki's Cloak is far superior than an Elite. So if an Elite uses a Cloak, they can still be seen. There's still like little ripples in the air, and if the Grineer can locate where the shots are coming from a completely invisible enemy, then they're going to be able to locate where the shots are coming from the Elites. And if they can find them, it's pretty much game over for the Spec Ops units. Unless the Grunts can come in with the fuel rods and lay in the heavy fire, but even then, I don't think that the Covenant is going to win because their armor is so heavy. Their armor is even heavier in the Nightwatch. They can absorb so much abuse. These guys can handle like 3 Opticore shots straight to the face and shrug it off. I'm not convinced that a fuel rod could do enough significant damage to the Nightwatch that it's going to kill anything more than the lightweight Nightwatch units. So like snipers will probably get killed off, but I can't think of. I think it's called a Thrak maybe. The ones that tote around napalms and stuff. Any heavies, they're definitely going to decimate the Grunts, and even energy swords are going to have a really tough time shredding through that armor because they're just not equipped. The Nightwatch, again, not only are they capable of dealing with Corpus, but they're accustomed to Warframe combat, so I don't feel like the energy swords are really going to be able to compete with that. But for the sake of continuity, we're going to step up again. We're going to talk about like Zealots in the Covenant ranks, who I feel can probably deal with the Nightwatch as long as they outnumber them. And then we're going to talk about the Kuva Guardians. Now the Kuva Guardians, again, are a huge step up from the previous units. The Grineer are... I'm telling you guys, you have been underestimating these units for a long time. I'm going to remind you that because we're Warframes and we are so tremendously stronger, we think of these guys as fodder, and therefore we think of them as weak. But if they're held in comparison to someone who is of equal military prowess, they're not nearly weak at all. They're really, really strong by comparison. So the Kuva Guardians, they are outright immune to all incoming damage. This is a current thing in Warframe. If you do not believe me, when you encounter the Kuva Guardians in the War Within questline, you will find that the only way that they can be damaged is if you strip them of their immunity using a thing called an amp or a mote, something that utilizes void energy. Essentially what void energy is this pocketed dimension, right? So in order for you to access this pocketed dimension, you need one of two things. You need a slip space warp drive so you can jump between realities, or you need like an Orkin key, an Orkin void key. What this does is it opens up the dimension and allows you to siphon energy from the layers between dimensions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Halo enthusiasts, but I don't think there's anything in the Covenant arsenal that harnesses slipspace jump energy into a weapon. There might be a weapon in the books that I'm not aware of, but to my knowledge, everything that I know, everything that I've watched from the Halo follower, I don't think that there's anything that harnesses slip space energy into a weapon. And if the Covenant don't have a weapon that does that, they have no chance at removing the immunity and vulnerability from the Kuva Guardians. So even when you move up to the Zealots, they could outnumber a Kuva Guardian 100 to 1. And it's not going to matter because they don't have the tech they need in order to start doing damage to the Kuva Guardians. Even after you remove their immunity, when you shatter their immunity using an amp, they still have very heavy armor. Some of the heaviest armor in all of the Grineer units, period. It's going to take a lot of damage to bring them down, and the worst part about it is that this immunity regenerates like an energy shield. So you only have a limited window of opportunity to really lay damage into them, and this is something that you have to deal with in Warframe. For a Mastery 14, this is going to be incredibly difficult for you to compete with these guys. These guys really are an issue for you from like Mastery 14 all the way to Mastery 18. I mean, hell, I'm Mastery 27 and sometimes they give me an issue. I never fear for my life, but they are very annoying for me to deal with. So, and keep in mind, the Kuva Guardians are still not the strongest thing that you can fight in the Grineer Armada. There is still something above them in terms of capability. And that is the Warframe threats that have only just been recently introduced to the game, called the Kuva Liches. Now, the Kuva Liches are not necessarily scary, but they are more than capable of being a viable threat for your Warframe, even when your mastery is as high as mine. What these guys do is, they're actually immune to death. They can't, like, you can slit their throat and watch them bleed out, but they will come back from the grave. And according to the storyline, according to what they say in dialogue in-game currently, is every time they're killed, they come back adapted to that death. So if you kill them by stabbing them in the gut, the next time they come back, the next time they're reincarnated, they're not going to be able to be killed via a stab wound in the gut. So they're similar to like Doomsday from DC Comics. They keep dying, and yet they keep coming back from it, and there's no way to put them down for good until you have a very special weapon called the Parazon. But the Parazon isn't all that you need. You see, with the Kuva Lich update, you actually need a specific mod order. You need 3 different mods, and they need to be in the right combination on that weapon in order to permanently put them down. What this means is that every Kuva Lich is different. Every Kuva Lich is unique. It's going to be impossible for the Covenant to do enough recon to get the intel necessary to put down Kuva Liches in bulk. And Kuva Liches can be made in bulk. We're seeing that happen. Each Warframe in-game is getting their own nemesis. So, for all we know, there could be 100 Liches out there, and if you have to deal with 100 Liches at the same time, I don't think that there's anything in the Covenant arsenal that can deal with that. Sure, you could argue that, oh, why would the Covenant even bother going in infantry versus infantry if their cruise ships can just glass planets? Well, here's the problem. There is a mission in which we're trying to steal a nuke from the Grineer, and once we get control of it, the Grineer's primary method of attack is to just detonate the damn thing while we're trying to extract it off the planet's surface. So they're not afraid of the planet that they're sitting on exploding. They don't care because they can keep cloning themselves. So if you glass the planet, it's really not a big deal to them. They're just going to keep producing units. Unless you cut them off at the roots, it's not going to matter. They're going to just keep coming back. Same thing with the Kuva Liches. What use is glassing a planet if the enemy that you're killing is going to be immune to that the next time they reincarnate? That would be bad. That would be very, very bad if you got all of these Kuva Liches immune to the massive Halo strikes glassing a planet. Like, can you imagine what type of enemy you would be dealing with it if it was immune to like an orbital strike? Huh, that would be really... I wouldn't want to mess with that Kuva Lich, but I'm a Warframe, so even the Kuva Liches aren't very threatening to me. And now we start talking about the Warframes again, because the strongest of the strong Warframes are even more ridiculous. You have enemies that are immune to death, but Warframes can be outright immune to damage completely. And I know a lot of Warframe players are going to be like, what, Vance? I mean, my Warframe still goes down. Well, if your Warframe still goes down, you're not using them properly, because after the War Within quest, you get access to your operator, and you can go into this thing called Void Mode, where you go invisible, and you negate all incoming damage. There's nothing in the Warframe arsenal wielded by any enemy that can do damage to us when we're Void Cloaked. Period. There's nothing. I've never seen an instance in which an operator fought another operator and they could harm them with the amp. This definitely requires a lot of testing. I feel as though we need to go into the dojo, do PvP, and see if operators can help hurt each other, but even then I would doubt it. I don't think that Tenno are going to be vulnerable to the weapons that they use, but that's my personal opinion. So, again, the Covenant have nothing to deal with this. The Grineer have nothing to deal with this. The Corpus have nothing to deal with this. No one has any answer for what the Tenno can do. Their psychic powers are unrivaled. They don't, like, the only enemy that is viable at this point to a Warframe or a Tenno is the sentience. So this is the next topic of debate.